Osofo Emani Dinso. Onyame ye na nadoye ewo hoda. Amen.
Amen.
With these words, mema ye nyina ye ho akwaba enumre eba final event. Jumedie enka meeting afi jumedie ayedie. Onyame adomunti enumre nso wode aba behia. Enumre se ne adwumadie no besi akọ no gidi ye se ebeye nhira ama ye nyina. Ansana ye befre wo mo amba beto dwom ne wo mo mbobọ mpa ya ama ye no mehre mo hye sa announcement we nso ema ye. Se wo adanse bia obepese obedi a ye be encourage you say adaroma ma wasori panyi aso ente. Wo mo nso e de be ma osofo kusi ye boa ene opanyi bo aben na beboa mampanyimfo ensa aka na afi hyehyɛ bia ɛwɔ sɛ ye fa ho ene bra obetumi di wadanse no na ya ma eno nso etuma bamu saa nti ye behwere mo sɛ mo nhyɛ eno enso emayen enumrei nyame adom mu Ebenezer Galant Choir ebe ma ye nwom wonom ewia ye maame Christiana Amankwa a ofri Charlotte ebedi ye nim ewo empire mu anunti gidi ye se enumre onyame ba behira ye bebre nti moma ye nyina ye nya ahoboa saa na ye emfollow dwumadie no senia mpanyimfo ahyehye no ma mo nyina makwa aba ebio enumre eba dwumadie so Ebenezer
So mi mona yemmi me ba free. So mi mona yemmi me ba phone mo. So mi mona yemmi me ba free. So mi mona yemmi me ba phone mo. So mi mona yemmi me ba free. So mi mona yemmi me ba phone mo. So mi mona yemmi me ba free. So mi mona yemmi me ba phone mo. Itamana wodi kata umasuna feri kata misuna. Itrana wodi mahumedino mami sumi bindo. Yeah, this was so mi mona yemmi me ba phone mo. So mi mona yemmi me ba free. So mi mona yemmi me ba phone mo. Sora no bayami me ba phone yemmi. Sora no bayami me ba phone mo. Sara no bayami, me gonna phone in a me. Sara no bayami, me gonna phone in Sara no bayami, me gonna phone in a me. Sara no bayami, me gonna phone in Sara no bayami, me gonna phone in a me. Sara no bayami, me gonna phone in Damino myself, woman, yamamo. So me mona yemmi, me gonna phone in If he said, Wunawuni, anyone, yamamo. So me mona yemmi, me gonna phone in So me mona yemmi, me ba free. So me mona yemmi, me ba phone mo. So me mona yemmi, me ba free. So me mona yemmi, me ba phone mo. Unyami mona ubelemi, eko me kramo musimon. Atiti me krame, ayene yo, manyo minyami, one free.
Agidifo momia mompaye. Ade nyina sutumfo. Enyame ne abank esie. Osuru hene nyame. Wo adom ne ehomobro ahye wo ma. Enwumere asedanka wudin da.
Amen.
Ayin kan wudin na ntuntun ka wudin. Yeda wase yi waye kanfo wudin ye tuntunun. Ye ma wo so kira mansan. Esan se woni ahene mu hene ene ewura mu ewurade. Woni ye di ni ye yeda wase da wase da wase. Yeda wase nhihye pa wonam NAGSDA mpanyifo so ama yetumi abehia enwumere nso. Enuonyam ka wudin. Sa mmiri nso ye stress wobehu ye mmobo na wodi ye bone ne ye mrato nyina ache yen. Edudwumadi ehye won sa soronko kwan so domfo nyame. Ye stress wobehwie hu kronkron hira no soronko ne tumi mu edi agu dwumadi yi so. Ye stress obeka nwumtofo ho ma wonnwum dede a emu nsem ebeka okra bi ama wasachra. Sa nso ne ye stress asofo ne elders ahuru a onwo vaccine onwo edi dwumadi ahuru nyina ehyiehira so na ma bibiara enkoye enhyewde na anuonyam. The communication for shawonsa efidi ahuru mu yusu nyina mirror hyehira so na bibia nkoso ye asomdwe mu. Afenso kasafo obedi ye nim anwumre de ne shawonsa so nkokwan so so obehwie hu kronkron hyira no agu no so na kasafa ni mu e de kire yen. Yesrese bubu yansu yakoma dindin nyinara na mayen asomre na kasa na yentie mu akoma pam ni adwene pam na nsiesie yenso ema oma ye toso mienu. Anwumre ohaw ni dadwene bia nso e de aba wani yesrese uyemobo na tie yen na ye maye mresem na yenso abedi adase ahye wudi na anuonyam. Eda wasi wa kanfo wudi nso watie yen na obeye sa maye. Esansi ebisa we nyina waje nkwapa Kristo din mu enye nhyira ene ayeyi ma wo Awurade wudin da. Amen.
Amen. Mame yeda wasi bebre mame Kristi nyame enhyira wo anwumre. Abusiafo anwumre ne yeba behwe no o say post pandemic church reopening. Sani adwumadi ni sitie no nyame adom yena Dr. Kuni ba ko a wobeboa Dr. David Prog na nyumre oba bedi anim na waba be eboa yen e wo sa adesua yi mu. Menka bibi kakra emfa Dr. Peprakwate ho. Meshemo menka ne brofo na aye very succinct. Dr. Pepra is currently a fourth-year medical student at the Yale School of Medicine and was selected as a National Institute of Health Medical Scholar for 2020-2021, the leading public research institute in the US. Prior to Yale, David completed his undergraduate degree in Harvard University and a master's in biotechnology at the Columbia University. Currently, he's applying to residency and will be awarded his medical doctorate in May 2022. Unyame Eshra Dr. Pam Gidi yes adwumadi ati sei no nipa a otesa no a obedi animu no ebeboa yen ama yehunu senya enema no ebesi akro. Ansa na doctor ebeba no yebe ekan ye scripture no yebe frɛ Elder Joseph Donko no akan scripture no ama ye opanyin wie pe a na ye theme song no enso atoa so ne amobetie no doctor ene opanyin wadarama
Agidifo enanwumre akenkan sɛm a Dr. Paul sɛ yɛmfa ni dwumadie anim no yebehunu wɔ mebusɛm etire du baako nchichemu edunan mebusɛm etire du baako nchichemu edunan ne watwerɛ no hɔ nie die akwankyerɛ enie no ɔman hwiase na ɔman woyɛ ɛwɔ aginatufoɔ dodoɔ emu. Pɛsɛ mekenkan no brɔfo. The scripture is taken from Proverbs 11:14. Proverbs 11:14. Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Awurade nhyira n'asɛm yi so, na ɔma yɛn nteaseɛ ɛwɔ n'adom nti. Amen.
Amen.
See
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Pipra. I'm actually the son of Dr. Pipra, and I will be talking about the reopening of the church in the post-vaccine pandemic. I saw the program said the post-pandemic, but we know this pandemic is not over. There's a lot that has been happening in the last week that has made people reconsider whether we are going to finish this pandemic in the near future. So there's a lot we'll be talking about. I will give myself 40 minutes to present. I don't want to go over the time. And so I will set my clock right now and we'll go over many topics. So the first topic we'll talk about is the SDA General Conference position on vaccination. What has the church really said about vaccination? And then we'll talk about the vaccine efficacy. How effective is it against these new variants? How durable is it? When will I need to get my next vaccine shot? And what are the side effects now that we have had the vaccine for about 7 months now? We'll also talk about the Delta variant. Many of you have heard about this new variant that's circulating that's more infectious, and it's even causing breakthrough infections and might need booster doses. And so we'll talk about that. A lot of new things we'll discuss. We'll also talk about the church safety precautions. How do we reopen the church in 2021 and 2022? We'll talk about the legal issues. Is it legal to ask somebody if they're vaccinated? Is it legal to turn them away? Are vaccine mandates on their way? And then we'll talk about the future of the pandemic, both here and globally, and also at home in Ghana. And so before I begin, I really want to just give you guys the takeaway message. I want to give you the answers to all your questions. The first is vaccines reduce transmission. Despite what you hear, vaccines reduce transmission. If you are vaccinated, you are less infectious and less likely to pass it on to somebody else. Vaccines are also near 100% effective at preventing death. Let me say that again. Vaccines are near 100% effective at preventing death. And we'll also discuss the need to wear a mask indoors, even if you're vaccinated. So a lot to discuss. The church will be closed until further notice due to the COVID-19 coronavirus. God help us all. This was posted on churches around the world. And so many churches have been closed since 2020. This is a new predicament that many of us are not aware of. And many of us have not experienced before. And so I want to talk about this and what is going to happen to reopen the church. Our greatest priority is to fully reopen the church safely. And so I just want to give us some historical perspective. Sarah, could you turn off the light? The lighting was actually set by the department. Thank you. So the historical perspective of the vaccine, and actually the pandemic, is that in 1918, the United States experienced a widespread pandemic. It was called the Spanish flu pandemic, and it killed almost 100 million people worldwide. Churches, schools, and shows were all closed. And at the time, the United States was fighting a world war which killed tens of millions of people. Yet here we are in 2021. Churches did reopen, and many forgot this actually happened. And now we have a new virus on our hands. In 2020, 1 in 500 Black people have died of COVID-19. COVID-19 was the third leading cause of death in the United States in 2020. Complications from COVID-19 include stroke, heart failure, kidney injury, and even more. Deaths in the United States reach up to over 600,000 people, and in Canada, 27,000 people have died because of COVID-19. Many of us know somebody who has died or has been affected by COVID-19. 1 in 3 symptomatic cases have developed into long COVID, that disease in which you feel fatigue, you feel COVID brain, in which you can't think, where you have a lot of symptoms that linger on. And so COVID-19 is a challenge. Let no one deceive you because of that. And so many of you guys watch CNN, and CNN this week, actually CNN back in May said, the CDC said vaccinated people don't need a mask inside or outside. The CDC said vaccinated people don't need a mask inside or outside. That was their word in May, but we know things have changed. And so in the United States, we saw many people discarding masks. We saw indoor spaces open up. We saw a reopening society. And again, we saw a flourishing of society. It felt like things were going back to normal. And a lot has changed. But before we get into that, I want to talk about what the church says, because I wanted to dispel all myths about what the COVID-19 vaccine means when you take it. And so the General Conference of the SDA Church put out a statement on December 18th, 2020. This is right when the vaccine was being distributed to the first line. They said, as we witness the global magnitude of the pandemic, the deaths, disability, and long-term COVID-19 effects that are emerging in all age groups, we are encouraging our members to consider responsible immunization and the promotion and facilitation of the development of what is commonly termed herd immunity, pre-existing community immunity of approximately 80% of individuals as a result of previous infection and or vaccination. They went on to say, the global upheaval caused by COVID-19 pandemic has generated considerable speculations related to end-time events and misinterpretations of the Bible. One recent view propagated through social media and some internet websites has put forward the theory that the upcoming vaccines produced to combat COVID-19 belong to a process of control that will lead to the application of the mark of the beast. It should be noted, however, that Adventists hold to the conviction that the end-time controversy will center on the law of God, and particularly on the fourth commandment, Revelation 14, verse 12. Moreover, the third angel's message will warn against the reception of the mark and will enlighten humankind as the issues involved. For this reason, it should be made clear that Seventh-day Adventists understand the mark of the beast to not be a literal mark, but a sign of allegiance that identifies the bearer as loyal to the power represented by the beast. So what are they saying? They are saying the vaccine is not the mark of the beast. As Adventists, we have no ethical reason, no moral reason to abstain from getting vaccinated. You cannot say, as Adventists, I believe that if I get the vaccine, it is the mark of the beast. Bible scholars at the General Conference have stated their position. And if you want, you can Google this. The document is there, and the church firmly stands behind this. And this was published in December 18th, 2020. So let's review some of the vaccines. We have Pfizer and Moderna, which comprise the mRNA vaccines. These are new technologies, which are really not so new, but these are new types of vaccines that deploy the technology of RNA, which is in our body. We eat RNA all the time. You need RNA to make protein. Protein is what is comprised in your body. Protein is the muscle. Protein is what makes your body happen. Without RNA, you have no protein. So when people say, I don't know what RNA is, you are taking RNA all the time. Your body makes RNA. RNA is a natural substance. And then we also have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's a viral vector. What does that mean? Basically, they use a special capsule of a virus that is dead and cannot infect you. Don't let anybody deceive you that it can infect you. That gets into your cells and delivers the DNA that is needed to actually make the RNA to make the protein. So it's a little bit one step before, and that allows it to make the material that elicits an immune reaction in your body, and allows your body to create antibodies and T cells. A lot of people think about the antibodies, but they forget about the T cells that actually allow your body to fight the virus. So your body makes antibodies to neutralize the virus, and it uses T cells, that's cell-mediated immunity. So the cells in your body, when you think about T cells, you think about AIDS. AIDS is when your T cells get infected and die. And so your T cells are important for your immune system. So the COVID-19 vaccine stimulates both antibodies and T cells to fight the virus. That is what the vaccine is doing. And we also have memory in our body. And so because you have the T cells and you also have the antibodies, you have memory. And so what does that mean? So your body remembers what the coronavirus now looks like. And whenever it encounters it again, the body will multiply these cells and build up a lot of antibodies to quickly neutralize and kill the virus in your body. The immune system is great. God created an amazing body, and we have learned ways to manipulate the body to fight a new virus. And that virus is COVID-19. And then we also have the AstraZeneca, which actually is the same viral vector technology that is also used. And I'm bringing up AstraZeneca because it's actually approved in Canada, and it was actually delivered to Ghana back in March. I'll talk about that at the end of our lecture if we have time. And so a lot of people have mentioned Johnson & Johnson and it causing some kind of side effect. A lot of people don't know what the name of the side effect is, and they just know that Johnson & Johnson is a bad vaccine, or Johnson & Johnson is not as good as the mRNA vaccine. I want to dispel that myth, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is actually critical to Ghana's vaccine response, and it's still being used in the United States. I'll say that again, it's still being used in the United States, and it's likely to be deployed in Ghana. So I think it's important for people to know what that is. So women between the ages of 18 and 59 years old were reportedly experiencing side effects from the vaccine. Now, let me tell you how many women, because I'm going to use numbers in this presentation. Don't shy away from the numbers. The numbers seem like they're just too big or too many numbers. The numbers are just to give you an idea of how small or how big the problem is. About 7 per million women were experiencing blood clots with low platelets. In medical terms, we call this thrombosis with thrombocytopenia for the doctors and the medical providers in the audience. And so 7 per million women experience blood clots with low platelets. Now, a lot of people do not know that women, about 5 per million women actually develop blood clots with low platelets without the vaccine. That just happens as a background rate is what we call. And so the Johnson & Johnson vaccine bumps that up a little bit. And so what does that mean? So when you have that, you tend to develop severe headaches, blurred vision, chest pain, and swelling. Those are the symptoms. But basically what has happened is you're starting to have blood clots in different parts of your body, and they can be potentially lethal. And so many people are afraid of this. The FDA monitors the drugs they put out. They monitor the vaccine, and people reported it to FDA. And many people say they don't trust the FDA, but the FDA monitors the drug after it approves it. And the FDA found that this was happening in about 7 per million women. And they said, we're going to pause it. And that happened in March. This made headlines. A lot of people saw this. The FDA wants to see if the vaccine is actually causing that. They wanted to investigate the case. And it decided that the risk do not outweigh the benefits. The benefits of vaccinating, that means preventing COVID-19, far exceeds the risk. One theme you'll get from my presentation is that we have to make choices in life that are not always perfect. Sometimes we have to weigh the greater good against the potential evil or the side effects. And the greater good far exceeds it. 7 per million is virtually 0. If I said divide 7 per million, you wouldn't know how to do that because it's such a small number. It's basically 0. If I were to vaccinate everybody in NAGSDA with this vaccine, I would expect no woman to develop this. And so that's how you can think about it in your mind. But the CDC said, because in America we have an abundance of mRNA vaccines, you can decide to take the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. And I think the Canadian Regulatory Agency also did the same thing. And so why is it important to vaccinate? If you have these rare side effects, it's a new technology, you don't really need it. COVID, a lot of people you know probably beat it without the vaccine. Why is it important? Well, I think this chart actually illustrates it beautifully. It's very important to understand. So COVID, the biggest risk factor is age. How old are you determines how your mortality will be if you get infected. What is mortality? Mortality is simply death. If you are 80 years old, you have a 1% chance of dying. That doesn't seem like a lot, but 1% chance is a lot in medicine. Most things don't reach 1% lethality, especially a virus, especially a sickness. And so it's very deadly in older people. So if you're 80, you have a 1% chance of dying. But if you get vaccinated, if you look at this, we'll follow along with my cursor, you'll see that your risk drops down to about the risk as a 50-year-old. So if you get vaccinated and you're 80, you basically have the immune defenses of a 50-year-old against COVID-19. And even look at it over here. The risk also drops down even further below. So what is 0.1%? That is 1 in 1,000. So if you are 50 years old, you have a little bit risk of less than 1 in 1,000 of dying from COVID-19. But if you vaccinate, you drop your risk way down 10-folds, actually 100-folds, and it gets almost as close to 1 in 100,000, the 100,000. So what does that mean? You drop your risk nearly to 0 if you get vaccine. That's what the vaccines are for. The vaccines are to prevent death. That's why the vaccines are so powerful. And that's why all the doctors, so a lot of the medical providers have taken it, because essentially it makes COVID a harmless disease. You may get a cold, you may get diarrhea, you may feel tired post-vaccination, but you will not die. And the point of this presentation is to convince everybody that if you get vaccinated, there is no reason why you should die from COVID-19. I'll say that again. If you get vaccinated, there is no reason you should die from COVID-19. If everybody in NAGSDA was to get vaccinated, we would have no deaths from COVID-19. And that's important. And so look at this chart and look at your own risk and ask yourself, am I appropriately assessing my risk for death from COVID-19? So the next thing we'll talk about is the Delta variant. There's been a lot in the news. It's actually getting a lot of press coverage. And remember, in the beginning of the week, the CNN had some breaking headlines, and many other news organizations said the CDC releases alarming study detailing the Delta variant's aggressive threats, warns the war has changed. So this week, the tone and the tenor of the pandemic has changed. It felt like in America, it was coming to end, things were opening, everything is about to be finished. We are going to live life back to normalcy. But then a lot has changed this week, and we'll discuss that. So what is the Delta variant? You might hear that in the news. People don't understand. The Delta variant is basically a more evolved, mutated form of COVID-19. It's COVID that's optimized. It's more infectious. What does that mean? It's easier to spread. On the right, we have what we call the R number. It's basically a basic number in biology that we use to describe how infectious a virus is. The original virus could infect 2 people. So if you got sick, you would infect 2 people, 2 to 6, 2.5 people. And then the Alpha variant that came out of the UK that was identified, that could infect 5 people. And so it's got a little bit more infectious. Now the Delta variant is thought to infect anywhere from 5 to 8 people, incredibly more infectious. For the viral load, it's about 1,000 times more viruses, so the virus can multiply even more aggressively. However, it's not more deadly. And so remember in the spring, when you were seeing India was getting hit by the coronavirus in February, March, and April, that was actually being driven by the Delta variant. The Delta variant was driving that massive wave where you got up to almost 400,000 cases, 500,000 cases a day. Those were the identified cases. There's probably even more that were not identified. And so the Delta strain is so good at multiplying, it outcompetes the other strains. What does that mean? It basically becomes the most common virus, right? It multiplies just so much faster than the original strain, and the Alpha strain, it becomes the dominant strain. And now it's the most dominant strain globally. And now we're seeing the increase in cases because the Delta variant is basically getting to more people faster. So one person can infect 8 people. Before it was 2. So 8 people get infected. And each of those 8 people can affect another 8 people, and so on. And so you have an incredibly aggressive virus. It's getting better. It's been in humans for almost 2 years now. It's getting smarter. It's learning how to infect more people, but it's not more deadly. That's important to keep in the back of your mind. And so how does the Delta variant compare with other variants? The Delta variant spreads faster. And so here are some other viruses that you might have heard of. Ebola. Ebola is the most deadly virus in the world. And so Ebola, if you get Ebola and you look at over here on the left hand of the screen, Ebola has a case fatality rate of about 50%. What does that mean? If 2 people get Ebola, 1 dies, 50% death rate. That means if you get it, you die. Remember those doctors in Sierra Leone and in West Africa? They were called heroes because once they contracted it, there was no cure. They got Ebola and quickly died. A very aggressive virus, but it's not that infectious. It comes through skin-to-skin contact. The Delta variant is different. The Delta variant is less deadly, but is now more infectious. And so what is another virus you can think of? Chickenpox. Chickenpox spreads very rapidly. We have vaccinated against it. It's not as deadly, but the Delta variant is very, very, very infectious. And so now you see the Delta variant, as time moves on, is becoming one of the most infectious viruses that's out there. And if you look at the original coronavirus, it was not as much as infectious as about polio, a little bit more infectious than the common cold, but now the Delta variant is moving towards chickenpox. Who knows how further it can mutate to become even more infectious. And so the Delta variant is incredibly infectious. And let me say this, if the Delta variant became more deadly, you would see a lot more lockdowns. You would see a lot more measures to stop the spread, because the thing about coronavirus is it's in that sweet spot where it's not lethal to a lot of people, but it's just lethal enough to be a problem. And so that's important to think about. And so this is the wave that is caused by the Delta variant. And so on the left is the number of cases per million, and on the bottom is the time. This is the date. And so if you look on the left side of the screen, this is the original wave. Remember those lockdowns in March? They said we're locking down. This is the original wave. Very small, not that many cases, right? And then last summer, we had some spikes in the south of the United States, and we had some spikes in the summer, not too much, and it went back down in the fall. Then in the winter, we have a massive surge. And historically, we know from the Spanish flu pandemic that I discussed in the beginning, the third wave is the worst wave of a pandemic. And in that wave, the United States hit almost up to 300,000 cases a day. It was incredibly deadly. And that's when a lot of people were dying. In January, deaths reached up to about 4,000 people per day in the United States. And it was a wave around the world because the cold weather drives people indoors. Indoors drives more infections. And then we saw the spring come and cases went down. The vaccine was introduced in December, and more people had immunity, and we saw a smaller wave. And then people started to discard their masks in May because it felt like the pandemic was over. And honestly, in my opinion, that was a reasonable decision because it was looking like the pandemic was likely to transition into a different phase. And then the Delta variant came. And so the Delta variant was hit in India in the spring, and then you saw it hit the UK the last month, and we saw cases rise almost exponentially. You see this go almost up, straight up. Very fast, hit it very hard. In the United States, we're getting hit by the Delta variant. The good thing and the good news is the vaccines, about almost 70% of the United States adult population is vaccinated. Most of the older people are vaccinated. Remember, I said the age is the biggest risk factor. And so we see that people are not dying as much. But we now see an increase in hospitalizations and deaths in unvaccinated people, at almost 99% of cases in hospitals being unvaccinated people. What is the takeaway message is? If you're vaccinated, you should be fine from the Delta variant. It might cause a cold, it might cause some diarrhea, it might cause you to feel tired, but you won't end up in the hospital. For the unvaccinated, many of you will probably beat it if you did catch it. But if you did catch it and it hits you hard, you can end up hospitalized, struggling to breathe. And that's a very scary thing unless you've ever been through it. They intubate you, they do a lot of aggressive things, and then they start putting a lot of drugs into you. So when people say, I don't want to take another drug or I don't want to take a vaccine because I don't want to put something into my body, when you're in that situation where you are hospitalized, you don't have many options. And so many people ask, how effective is this vaccine against the Delta variant? Because it's such a new variant, is the vaccine actually good at it? So from the Public Health England Service, that's the National Service for the Public Health of England. England has a nationalized healthcare system similar to Canada, in which it's unified and they can track things. They found that it's 88% effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. The Public Health England routinely monitors cases. And so they do testing, they look at the strains, and they found that it's about 88% effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. The CDC estimates in the American population, which is a bit different, it's about 75 to 85% effective. Still very effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. Why am I saying symptomatic COVID-19? Because the vaccine is actually 97% effective at preventing severe COVID-19. What does severe COVID-19 mean? Severe COVID-19 is basically you having COVID-19 to the point where you need to go to the hospital for oxygen. You need to be hospitalized because you can't breathe. That is severe COVID-19. And so it's 97% effective relative to unvaccinated people at reducing symptoms, right? And so if your risk is 1% for your age, you have a 97% reduction, right? You do the math, you decrease that by 97%, you have a very small risk. And so that's why the vaccines are very good. This is 97% after 6 months. It's very, very, very good. And in the United States, government has found a similar efficacy for the COVID-19 vaccine. If you're a bit older, if you are pushing 70, 75, 80, it's probably lower than 97%. If you are young, it's virtually 100%. If you're in the middle, it's 97%. Very, very good. And so let's talk about the news a little bit. You turn on MSNBC and this comes on. Rochelle Walensky is a CDC director. She's the lead director of the Infectious Disease Agency in the United States, and it tracks diseases in the United States and other things, and takes numbers and epidemiology. And what she said was that new indoor mask guidance for fully vaccinated as Delta variant fuels rise in cases nationwide. For fully vaccinated, I thought in April, the vaccinated people did not have to wear a mask. Then the CDC this week comes and says, you have to wear a mask. So many people started panicking and they were asked why. Then later in the week, they said, this is about Friday, so very recently, the CDC said breakthrough infections may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases. The media saw it and they ran with it. It scared everybody. People took the vaccine not only for themselves, but to protect others. And now the CDC is saying that against this Delta variant, you might have the same amount of virus in you as somebody who's unvaccinated. Why would I even take this vaccine? What was the point of that? Does this even work? So many people who are anti-vax start to run with that. And they say, see, we told you so. You took a vaccine that doesn't even work. And a lot of people have feared. And then people started to say, are we going back into lockdown? What's going to happen now? Is this pandemic going to last forever? People are frustrated. People are afraid. And many of us don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so I want to talk about that a little bit more. And we'll get to what we call breakthrough infections. You've probably heard it on the news. This is why I personally, I don't like watching CNN. I prefer to read the news because news is dramatized, right? Trump is not president anymore, so they need to dramatize something. So they chose to talk about breakthrough infection. That anxiety that it creates, it gets you to watch more news, and you talk about breakthrough infections, and you start thinking about it. Is this vaccine actually working? Maybe I should not do the behaviors I thought I should do. Maybe I should avoid certain places. Maybe I should avoid certain people. What do we know about breakthrough infections? Does the vaccine protect me from the Delta variant? Is the vaccine effective at reducing transmission? We talked about the Delta variant and the vaccine. The vaccine reduces severe deaths by severe hospitalizations by 97%, and virtually for deaths actually by 100%. It's very rare that people die after vaccination, even if they get hit with the Delta variant. So is the vaccine effective at reducing transmission? Because the CDC said viral load is the same as unvaccinated people. So is the vaccine actually doing anything? And so the CDC definition of a breakthrough infection is actually detection of virus genetic material via PCR. Many of you have to take the test if you want to travel to Ghana or abroad, or the antigen test. The antigen is basically another way to test in your blood to see if you have antibodies. Sometimes the antibodies acutely respond to infection. So those are two ways we can detect the virus. And so that's what the CDC defines it as. If you are able to detect the virus in somebody, they have a breakthrough infection if they've been fully vaccinated. And so your risk of breakthrough infections increase as cases increase. I want everybody to know that. Your risk of breakthrough infections increase as cases increase. So I want to use a metaphor that people understand. Imagine you have an open goal. Many people like to watch football. In America, we say soccer. But in football, you have an open goal. Imagine you had no goalie. This is what it's like to be unvaccinated. You can take as many shots on goal and you're going to score. The vaccine is trying to score on your body. Now, many of us remember in 2010, the World Cup in South Africa, Ghana got to the quarterfinals and was trying to be the first African team to make the semifinals. And Ghana faced Uruguay. And remember, Luis Suarez, the former Barcelona star, got in the way. Also, there's a goalkeeper and the defense. That is what you call vaccination. That's what vaccines do. It prevents the opposing offense from scoring in your goal. And so remember what happened. Tragically, Luis Suarez decided to cheat the rules and use a handball to stop the goal from happening, preventing Ghana from scoring in extra time, and Ghana lost in penalty kicks. And so the vaccine is basically a defense for your body. But what happens if you keep shooting? Imagine if Ghana shot the ball 20, 30 times. Imagine if you gave Asamoah Gyan more shots. Imagine you gave him 40 tries. He missed the penalty. He missed many of these shots. But if you imagine if you gave him 40 more times, surely he would make a goal. And that's exactly what it is. When we have more cases in the community, your body's able to defend against the virus after vaccination. The vaccine teaches your body how to defend it. But if you're constantly bombarded, constantly hit, eventually one virus is going to break through and invade the immune system. Your body, however, will be able to control the shots on goal and prevent the other team from winning in penalty kicks. You'll still prevent severe disease. You will feel symptomatic. That's what a breakthrough infection is. Many shots on goal, eventually the virus scores. But it does not win the game. The game is death. And your virus and the vaccine is almost virtually undefeated at preventing death. And so in the United States, the CDC tracks breakthrough infections. They look for breakthrough infections looking at hospitalizations. Remember, when I said symptomatic COVID, that 88% reduction or that 75% reduction, depending on who you're listening to, that's actually in symptoms. So the symptoms, the diarrhea, the headaches, those are breakthrough infections. Those are not necessarily the same as hospitalizations. And so the CDC defines hospitalizations as breakthrough infections in post-vaccinated people. And that happens very rarely. 1 in 200,000 fully vaccinated people have died after an outbreak. That's about 6,200 cases. And they actually did follow-up. They did an investigation of breakthrough infections. And they looked to see that in actuality, about 5,000 people, this is as of July 26, about 5,000 people have had breakthrough infections and been hospitalized, and less than 1,000 if you actually take away the other cases, that 309 cases of asymptomatic or not related to COVID-19. So less than 1,000 people post-vaccination have died. What does that mean? That's 1 in 40,000 for hospitalization and 1 in 200,000. That's zero. I don't know what 1 divided by 200,000 is. That is zero in most people's mind. And so what does that mean? For yourself, that means breakthrough infections, yes, they may occur. You may become symptomatic, but that's not the same thing as a breakthrough infection causing a hospitalization. That's what you care about. You know how to deal with a cold. You know how to deal with the flu. You've had that in your lifetime. You just stay at home and you relax and you heal, you drink more fluids, your body will take care of the rest. The vaccine's very good at that. The vaccine is the last stop. It's the last stop gap in preventing you from dying. And that's why the vaccine is very powerful. So when people talk about, oh, the vaccine's not doing anything, the vaccine stops deaths virtually. It's almost zero risk of dying after you've been vaccinated. And so this is how you can see breakthrough infections. On the bottom is, on the screen is actually a chart. And I want you guys, I'll give you guys about 5 seconds to find the yellow dot. If you can find the yellow dot, please write in the chat. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, pretty sure that no one has saw the yellow dot. The yellow dot was in the corner. And that represents a visual the risk that people have, right? Of dying from COVID. And so basically for every 100,000, assuming that the rate is actually higher than what the CDC says, there'll be 1 death. So you do not have to worry about dying from COVID-19 if you've been vaccinated. And so this is a similar representation. All it shows is that severe disease is almost non-existent. We don't even put that here on this visual representation. You might have moderate disease. You might have a mild disease, but a vast majority is asymptomatic. You don't feel anything. That 88%, you don't feel anything for the average person. And if you're very healthy, you take care of yourself, you probably will have an asymptomatic infection. So what about transmission? So why did the CDC say that they think that the viral loads are similar for vaccinated and unvaccinated? Well, they were doing a case study of what happened in Barnstable, Massachusetts. That's the county that has Cape Cod. Cape Cod is a rich area that many people go vacation. President Obama frequently goes to Cape Cod. And so in this county, it's very liberal. And so many people took up the vaccine. They had vaccination rates of over 70%. And then in the July 4th, that's for the Canadians, July 4th is America's Independence Day. Many people started to gather indoors. And because mask mandates were relaxed, a lot of people came in very close quarters. And if you think about it, the vaccine should prevent any big spread or any big outbreak. And then they started to see there's increasing cases in Barnstable County, that Cape Cod place. And the CDC published a report. They were doing the internal report, but that leaked to the news outlets. And then people heard that the viral load for unvaccinated versus vaccinated is the same. And so from this study, they showed that the unvaccinated and the fully vaccinated were similar. And which led people to conclude, and led the CDC to conclude, the viral load of the vaccinated versus unvaccinated for Delta is the same. There's problems with that study. And a lot of scientists have come out to critique it. Even the Biden administration have come out to critique it because it just looked at one time point. Imagine I came into your life and I saw you at the worst moment in your life and said, that is who you are. No, I get to know you over time. And so actual studies from around the world, this comes from Singapore, found that the viral load initially is about the same, but the body starts to elicit an immune reaction, antibodies and T cells to rapidly clear the virus. And so that is what happens. Your body's able to clear it faster and you're less infectious over time. And so there's gonna be a lot more research, but I warn everybody to not over rely on initial studies. That's what happens. The media takes these initial studies, starts to run with it and starts to say that breakthrough infections happen more commonly, but that's not the truth. The truth is we don't really know, and the CDC sampled one time point. There are more better design studies that show that over time, the body clears it faster. You have to give the antibodies and the T cells time to react to it. And vaccinated people clear it much faster than unvaccinated people. Many scientists, leading scholars at the top institutions said they don't agree with this, and they're pretty sure that this is not the case. And even in real world studies in Israel, they looked at healthcare workers and they tracked every healthcare worker that had a breakthrough infection, and they looked at their close contacts, who they live with, and they found that the cases were not transmitted. The breakthrough infection was not transmitted to the people they live with. They weren't transmitted to their kids. They weren't transmitted to their wives. They weren't transmitted to any close contact, people they came into contact. So we have real world data and actual people to show that the actual breakthrough infections weren't actually causing spread. And so this is something that's ongoing, but I want to caution people to stop saying, oh, vaccines, unvaccinated people, doesn't matter. Breakthrough infections happen and then you're more infectious. No, that's not necessarily the case. And this is something of ongoing research. The CDC said to wear a mask indoor, and I believe that's true. Right now, it's better to wear a mask indoors because it protects others and protects yourself. So right now, just wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask either, but we wear masks indoors because the spread is more contagious indoors. Outdoors is better ventilation. So will there be booster doses? And I'm going to wrap up pretty soon. There's a lot of controversy, there's a lot of debate. The CDC and many agencies are leaning towards getting booster doses for age 65 and above and the immunocompromised because they feel that a third dose might be helpful. Pfizer released a 6-month update this week, actually, and they said that the actual efficacy for symptomatic infection declines by 6% every 2 months. But this is Pfizer. Remember, Pfizer is a company that's in it to make money. And so they have a financial interest to get more vaccines outside. So the United States government has a financial interest to not pay for more vaccines and a financial interest and a duty to not harm the public. And so they want to see that this is important, right? You don't want to keep vaccinating people if it's not necessary. And at 6 months, the vaccine was about 97% effective at preventing severe disease. So it's virtually 100% effective. And so the CDC, the FDA is going to have to battle it out with Pfizer. And Pfizer's gonna have to prove that this is the case, that we need booster doses. So a lot of scientists believe that vaccine actually provides immunity for life because the T cells actually lived in your body for a very long time. And so if you ever encounter the virus, it activates your immune system, and the immune system rapidly clears it, and then your immune system becomes better at fighting the vaccine next time. There've been studies to show, the virus next time. There've been studies to show that if you get reinfected, you have more ability to fight the virus. And so scientists believe that the 2 vaccinations is probably enough to last for a lifetime. And so there's a lot of controversies, and they're going to need to do a lot of clinical trials, and they're going to need a lot of studies to prove that a booster dose is necessary. And who knows what that variant might emerge. That might actually tip in the favor of booster dose. But for now, it looks like the vaccine is very good against all the type of variants that are circulating right now. And the vaccine is very good at preventing death, and that has been stable. So boosters, maybe. Now to wrap up, I'm approaching 40 minutes. What can the church do to safely open? Now that there's a Delta variant, before, I thought churches could fully open and have no masks because, a lot of people were getting vaccinated and a lot of people had natural immunity from previous infection. But the Delta variant is changing a lot because it's very aggressive and is infecting people who were previously infected, and it might be infected people who are vaccinated. So what can people do? Basic hand hygiene, wash your hands. It's very effective, but from research, we actually learned that COVID is not actually really transmitted on surfaces, not that much. It's pretty rare. So it's not that COVID can be transmitted from a surface, what we call fomites, but it's not necessarily happening. They've been doing a lot of studies to show that deep cleaning actually doesn't do anything. So if you have the deacons in your church, deacons and deaconesses, deep cleaning is not necessary. You can wipe down the mics, you can do other things, but you don't have to wipe every single surface in the church. Basic hand hygiene is enough. The churches should also conduct anonymous surveys on how many people are vaccinated. I think that's very important because you don't compromise people's health privacy, but you do understand how many people are vaccinated and what percentage of your church is towards herd immunity. The local health departments at your church can figure out a way to do that in a way that protects the privacy rights of your church members. And I encourage churches to do that. HEPA filters, I'll show you on another slide. HEPA filters are very effective at circulating air. A lot of churches don't have central air. And so, central air, AC. And so, HEPA filters are actually really good at sucking the air in the room and filtering it to remove viral particles and putting out clean air. And so, HEPA filters have been recommended by the CDC for spaces that there's not a lot of ventilation or small spaces. And so, churches can buy HEPA filters at a cost of anywhere from $100 to $1,000, depending on the size of the HEPA filter, and run those during services and protect the people of the church. They can also upgrade the HVAC system, so that's systems that circulate the air in the church, to reduce aerosols. So basically, when you speak, that puts virus in the air. If you have a good HVAC system, it can remove a lot of the viral particles. So if the church has enough money, they can also invest in the HVAC system, which is an investment for long term. All church members should be vaccinated until further notice. You can make use of outdoors. It's summer right now. You have nice weather. If you want, I've been to certain churches in person. A lot of them are not eating after church. You could literally use the outdoor space if your church has enough physical space to go outside and potentially eat. Physically distance people, tell people to use some common sense and eat outdoors. Why not? We know for studies that outdoor transmission is very rare. The wind, the natural air that God provides, ventilates everything. And vaccinations should be frequently discussed and promoted. Vaccination is going to be something that's you're going to hear about. If you're tired of hearing about it, I'm sorry, but there's too many people that are not vaccinated, and the church has to talk about it. If you're in the local health department at your church, start reading about it and start talking about it. Talk to the elders and the leaders of your church to start scheduling programs to discuss the vaccination. And I'll tell you, I'm more than happy to come via Zoom or in person if you are in the Northeast to come and talk about vaccination. I think it's very important, and it's the most important health threat to Black people. And so vaccination is incredibly important to talk about. So this is the HEPA filter. This is what it is. It's a machine that sucks the air and cleans it. It puts it through a filter, sort of like a mask, but it filters out the viral particles, kills it, and puts out clean air. And so it circulates the air in the room. Get a couple of these in a big space, and you can provide cleaner air for people, reduce the risk of transmission. You don't want the air to not move. You want the air to move. And so these HEPA filters, some are very good, some are very silent. You can put them in the servers and have lower transmission in your church. The CDC has recommended that. And then also look at local guidelines. So these are some rules of thumb to think about for the health departments. You typically want your cases in your local area. You can look that up. online, the cases should be about 5 to 10 per 100,000. That's a number that we usually hear. Or the positivity. So the positivity rate, you just Google it, a lot of the local, you can literally Google where you are and you talk about the positivity rate, it'll give you the number. You want the positivity rate to be a little bit less than 10%. And you want the positivity ideally to be less than 5%. And if you're afraid, double masking is known to more protect you and decrease the number of particles that you put out. And so viral particles are decreased by 97%. Legal aspects, quickly, churches can ask about vaccination status. They can refuse entry of unvaccinated. It's very legal across the place. Many businesses do that. The churches similarly consider that. If you're in a Republican area, that might be different. If you have lawmakers, or if you're in Canada, if you have, depending on the politics of the place, the local laws may prohibit this, but it's important to protect the health privacy. And it's better not to stigmatize people. But there are, legally, the church can ask you if you're vaccinated prior to entry and refuse entry. I don't think that's necessary, but that is actually something that is potentially on the table. Mandates. There's a carrot and the stick. The United States government has started to try to use carrots. So as the Canadian government, they try to incentivize people to get vaccinated. The stick, proverbially, is death. But the also stick is coming in that you can lose your job or you can't go to school. Or you can't fly to certain countries. Vaccine passports are coming. But before this happens, the FDA really needs to approve everything. And so the FDA is actually currently reviewing millions of pages of data. They want to look at all the data that Pfizer can get to make sure that the vaccine is safe and effective. And this typically takes 10 months, but it's being speeded up to 6 months. And you can expect that full approval between August and October. Once the FDA approves the vaccine, moving it from emergency use authorization to full phase 3 approval, a lot of businesses have said they will come forward and institute vaccine mandates. And so if you want a job, it's going to be difficult if you're unvaccinated because a lot of big businesses will institute vaccine mandates. And that's already happening right now. Facebook, Google, Netflix, Morgan Stanley have all released policies that their employees have to have vaccination. New York State has said all employees need to get vaccinated or get tested periodically. Federal government has said all employees need to be vaccinated. And for students, they don't even have the ability to get tested. If you want to come back in person to campus, starting in August and this fall, you have to be vaccinated. And that's 600 universities, major universities across the country. And that number is growing every day. And in Canada, the picture is mixed. Certain universities do it, certain don't. But Canada overall has one of the highest percentages of their population vaccinated. So Canada doesn't even really need to use these methods, but it might happen in Canada too. So wrapping up, so we can give time for the discussion. What is next for the pandemic? You saw the Delta variant is very aggressive. It happened and it went very high, higher than most waves of the pandemic. But in the UK, we saw that things are starting to fall very rapidly. So what goes up must come down. And so the cases are coming down rapidly in the UK. And so the UK is actually a month ahead of us in the Delta wave. And so we can expect to see the United States and Canada, which is actually pretty well off in terms of cases per capita. We're going to see the cases rapidly fall within about 3 weeks to a month. So it might seem bad for the next couple of weeks, but they will start to fall. What goes up must come down because after you have been infected, you gain immunity. So more infections, more vaccinations equal more population immunity. And so as time goes on, more people have immunity and we'll see less waves like this one we're seeing right now. Ghana. What's going on in Ghana? Briefly, Ghana had COVAX. COVAX was actually the organization that is internationally funded by the WHO to deliver vaccines. Ghana was the first country in the world to receive COVAX vaccines. They got AstraZeneca about 1.3 million doses, and they distributed it to people. And the president of Ghana has promised that 18 million doses by October will be delivered. 17 million of those doses would be Johnson & Johnson, the one I talked about, and 1 million will be Pfizer vaccines. And then they'll actually get about 250,000 of AstraZeneca. And so Ghana is gonna get a lot of vaccines by October because Ghana's actually experienced a Delta wave too. How about new variants? It's possible. There's not enough people vaccinated. There's not enough people who have a strong immunity. And so the virus has opportunities to mutate. Could it become more infectious? Yes. Could it become more deadly? Possibly. So far, the vaccines have been able to hold the line and prevent that. And so to summarize, vaccines reduce transmissions. Vaccines are near 100% effective at preventing death. Wear a mask indoors. That is the message. Vaccines reduce transmissions because we know this from every vaccine that's produced. Most vaccines reduce transmission, and vaccines are near 100% effective at preventing deaths. Wear a mask indoors. Make the right decision for your body, for your health, for your family, and for your community. And I like to finish on these words. Where there's no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And also, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge because you have rejected knowledge. Hosea 4, verse 6. And this is what we used to go to. This is 2019 camp meeting. It's in person. Now we're on Zoom. But I want to give people hope that maybe in 2020, and my belief, I think in 2020, we can get back to a full camp meeting. And I believe in the future, we're not going to have to mask. We're not going to have to socially distance. We will get past this. Society has gotten past this before. God has not left us. We will move past it. Make the right decision and protect yourself. And now I'd like to open up for questions. I went 10 minutes over. And so depending on how the program leaders want to go, I can give questions. But remember, I'll provide my email so you can contact me if you want to talk a little bit more. And I'm willing to come to the local church to talk about it. So I'm open for questions.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
I have a question.
Amen.
You
David.
don't have to ask a question in English. You can actually.
David. Okay. Ansana, Jabubusa questions. No, ebi a men can't wait quickly. David, sebia obetimi a on share.
Okay.
David, it's language bia okatwi pa na oka brofo no so ba oka brofo no mo ba twi bi obeka bia so no David eti twi bi obeka bia no David eti nti se na your question ubusa question bia no feel free to ask it in whatever.
Yo, I say, before I'm say, first question I'm say by me na the casa no or can be say when we are indoors we have to wear a mask to protect ourselves. Do you mean that when we are sleeping too, we have to cover, we have to use the mask? Because indoors, it all applies that we have to, when we are sleeping too. Because I still don't get it. Say, you were inside that, we have to cover ourselves. Then our children, how are they going to survive?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, who said? Yeah, that's my
question. No, you don't have to wear a mask when you're sleeping. You don't have to wear a mask in your own house. That's your household. Whatever you have will be transmitted to your household, right? If you do get infected, it's recommended that you mask and distance from your own family because you don't want to give them the virus. However, if you are by yourself, you do not have to mask. If you're with your family or in your home, you don't have to mask. But if you enter public places, it's recommended that you do mask, especially in areas of high transmission. So mask for now. As cases come down, you probably won't have to mask, but we don't know what the timeline is. We don't know if new variants will emerge. So right now the guidance is mask. When you're indoors, outdoors, you're fine. If you're not around a lot of people and you're not standing still, it's okay to take off your mask because the air ventilates everything. So mask indoors, in public, not at your own home.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, when you were talking, you said when you take the COVID vaccine, you're not going to die or say be science, but so the videos, you be say be news, be no be a chat, no man can say be be taking COVID vaccine, no, or nyana shock and I say be a very serious. And also so you better then I found because I am an international news I say and WhatsApp and the Facebook near there and so take vaccines Libya or money effect are very serious.
Yeah.
Then so and then I'll bet me I can find me that's
a good question. So I'll say this: do not follow what you see on WhatsApp. It's misinformation. Why do I say that? Because people will take stories that they don't understand or they probably heard and say, this is what's happening. People are not dying from the vaccine in terms of mRNA vaccine, right? Because what happened is that people who are not fully vaccinated may catch COVID, right? Or they may die from an unrelated cause, right? Just because you get the COVID vaccine doesn't mean that the COVID vaccine is protecting you from all illnesses. So if you have the COVID vaccine and you're fully vaccinated, and then 14 days later you had a heart attack, that doesn't mean the heart attack killed you. Hypertension probably killed you. Other causes of diseases probably killed you. And so what the researchers do is that we look for increases in death. We have to look at a population level, not the individual, and look to see if people are dying from certain causes. And if that happens, like in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, when there were blood clots in women, they pause it and then they investigate a little bit more and then they decide. But in general, do not believe what you see on WhatsApp. It's very, very misleading. It'll scare a lot of people. Use averages, right? If you get vaccinated, you have a virtually 0% chance of dying. I don't care what you say about what you saw on WhatsApp. I've seen the videos. I watched the videos. It's misinformation. And remember, when you spread that, when you share that, you cause people to not take the vaccine and you put their life at risk because they're starting to take behavior that is dangerous. Imagine somebody sees a video that says, oh, the COVID vaccine kills you. So they're afraid, or they heard something that the COVID vaccine kills you. So they don't take the COVID vaccine and then they get the Delta variant. And then they land in the hospital and the doctors in the hospital can't save them and they die. That misinformation killed that person. And so it's important to follow official sources, follow the Canadian government, follow the US government. If you don't trust the government, remember this pandemic is a worldwide thing. There's things that happen around the world. And so if the United States is lying, you will hear from another country. And if that country's lying, you will hear from the United States and so on. But it's important.
Okay, I want to add something about what you just said, that I think a lot of people need education about that, especially the Ghanaian community. They are following all those stuff, and because of that, some people refuse to take the vaccine because of what they hear and what they are following. So as a church, we need education about that so that people can take the vaccine. Thank you.
Dr. Mpacho, Mr. Wada, so COVID in the Bayano, on say the near how Kakran one year, your mano. Your money, the achieve, when say, and shed that a ham papa. But very anti we know, nim a home to transfer a war, your mana, ebia, COVID-19 grano, among Mobino. Still, I know, want some to say, boy, Kakra, that's it.
Very important. Then when I show that graph, the age risk, right? By the risk of dying by age. Children have virtually zero risk, right? In the United States, we probably had about 400 to 500 children die because of COVID. It seemed like a lot, but if you remember, the United States has hundreds, if not hundreds of millions of people who are below the age of 18 who qualify as children. And so that risk is actually virtually very low. And so they estimate the risk for an average kid, even before vaccination, is very low, even probably lower than most adults after vaccination. And so kids, we know, do not get severe COVID-19 on average. You rarely go, you can go to a hospital right now, go talk to the pediatricians and see how many kids have COVID-19 in the hospital. And then ask them what conditions they have. Those kids probably have cancer, they have something immunocompromised, something. So we know that kids do not really get sick from COVID-19. However, the kids can spread it. Kids have a better immune system than adults because they're younger. And so kids actually control the infection faster. So they actually clear it faster than adults. So they're actually less infectious than adults, but they still infect people. Now, what does that mean for what does that mean for you? Kids the CDC and the FDA are looking to vaccinate kids to reduce community spread, to also protect them against the Delta variant. The Delta variant is not killing kids more because it's not killing adults more. Kids are doing fine. And in the United States, they are actually opening schools and encouraging everybody to go in person. It's very important because school is much better in person. And the risk of dying from COVID is very low if you are a child. I'll say that again. The risk of dying from COVID is very low if you are a child. The kid has, a child actually has a greater risk of dying in a car accident, much greater risk, 10, maybe 100 times greater risk of dying in a car accident than to die from COVID-19. And so kids are safe from school. The question is, can they actually get community spread? Are their parents safe, right? What if the kid contracts COVID and brings it to their parents? And so they recommended masks for children, and they recommended that all schools try to be open. And so you see in New York State has said that all kids will come to in-person. There will be no Zoom this year. And they're gonna try to stick to that. Unless the virus becomes more deadly, there's a new strain, they're gonna stick to that as much as possible, and they're gonna try to vaccinate kids. The CDC and the FDA are running studies to try to get the vaccine to them later this fall. But for now, kids are safe. You don't have to worry about your child dying from COVID. If you don't believe me, ask all your friends how many of their child have actually been hospitalized from COVID or died. You won't find anybody virtually. And so this is not my opinion, this is actual research. UNICEF and other organizations have come out to say, kids need to go back to school. Children are safe from COVID-19. It's better that we vaccinate them in case anything happens in the future. And you will know the schools will close if it's unsafe for children. But children are fine. They will mask in school to reduce the spread, and they'll be fine.
Dave,
Dave,
obi wo line so apagya ne sache friend Ajua, obi so chat. The question is what do you say about disposable mask? Which type would you recommend? And we are obi edi Ajua. Tiema Ajua wapagya ne nsa no enkana fadi mi enu bom. Ajua obetumi akasa.
Okay, me da say. Me pocho ma say mbisa ne say send your BD can say news near the na try you say be more mo vaccine no. Omanya ebia ho side effects na so severe. Na me pese me bisa sa na companies no mo these vaccines no. Omo take responsibilities say bia obi ko na say onya or how we chira. Ma say mbisa no me da say.
Great question. So to answer the first question about mask, N95 are the best. There are even masks that are better than N95, but that's for special people who deal with viruses. But N95 are hospital grade. Then you have KN95. KN95s you can buy at the store, are pretty good. You can buy it on Amazon. At first, in the beginning of the pandemic, there's a shortage. Now there's plenty of KN95s. You can buy that. Then surgical masks, you can buy that too. Halyard, there are different companies that sell surgical masks. Those are pretty good too. Those blue masks that you see are really good too. The bad masks are like the ones that you have over your neck, the ones with a filter like this, if you see that it has a filter on the side, those are very bad. The FDA does not recommend that. And then you have a cloth mask. Cloth masks are not very good, but they work in terms of protecting, in terms of at least reducing some of the droplets. But like I said in the presentation, you can double mask. You can wear an N95 and you can put a cloth mask on it. You can get an N95 and put a surgical mask on it. You just want to have something that's reasonable. But if you're vaccinated, a mask is fine. You don't have to go over the top for a crazy mask. If you believe that you have a lot of risk factors, such as hypertension, diabetes, that's very common in our population, cancer, invest in a better mask. And double mask if you're in a setting where you feel you're not safe. Next question that Auntie brought up was very good. Are the drug companies liable if they cause death? Yes, they are. If they report the information that they receive to be false and they knowingly suppress that, they are liable to lawsuits and they lose trust. Their stocks will plummet because people can't trust that. Remember, if you're developing a vaccine for the whole world, you have to make it safe enough for the whole world to take virtually. And so if they start to have lots of side effects and it comes to light, the company loses its reputation and it gets remembered as the company that killed people and lied to people. So Pfizer would not be viable if they had a vaccine that's not good. But remember, we also have the FDA. The FDA right now is looking for the phase 3. Right now it's on EOA, emergency use authorization. The FDA is reviewing it for phase 3. And they're looking at millions of pages of data. They're going line by line, multiple experts looking to see if they're telling the truth. So we have processes to make sure that these vaccines are safe. And in Canada, they're also doing the same thing. UK is also doing the same thing. Israel's doing the same thing. Ghana's doing this, a lot of countries around the world. And so you have a lot of eyes on it, right? If a lot of eyes can't miss something. And so that's why I tell people, get vaccinated, because a lot of people with the interest to make sure that we protect our people are looking at it. And so when people say, oh, they're lying, you have to lie against a lot of people. And so a lot of people are looking at the data to make sure it's safe. And if they're not safe and the companies lie about it and they play with the numbers and it gets people to die, they are liable. They can be held accountable in court. It's criminal action, it's civil action, and it can be very damaging financially. And so it's important that the companies tell the truth and the government hold them accountable. And governments around the world also hold them accountable. I don't know how we're doing on time. So if the leaders of the program want to tell me how we're doing on time, that'd be great before we have more questions.
Doctor, I'm set your time. No, I'm set. I choose one. I mean, it must be just about one question, yeah, and then now you're wrapping up.
My question. I have a question.
Meba time no aso ho na me hu se nkrofo asende questions bi e wo chat no munti esrema a doctor for ne health professionals mo wo lines no ebi ho no na se mo betimi answer e wo chat no so amayenya eni beje ho sa pa because ye bre no ntimi ye ntimi enkenkan ne nyina answer be se wo ho nimge bi atitiru mo am health mo na mo answer na bia yenye one last question na afi.
Hello. I have a question. One point that is very confusing to people is when they say 60% efficacy, 30% efficacy, because you can see the differences between the vaccines in terms of efficacy. What does efficacy means? If you can explain that to us.
Great question, Pastor. So efficacy is basically a relative number. So what does that mean? We actually, I'm going to hurry up to finish it. What does that mean? To measure a vaccine, you compare it to people. You can't just say any random number. You compare the people who received the vaccine versus the people who did not receive the vaccine, the unvaccinated. So the 97% or the 60% efficacy refers to symptoms, right? You have severe COVID-19, which is which causes hospitalizations and deaths. That's almost 100% across the board for all vaccines that are now used in the United States and in Canada. And then you have symptomatic COVID-19. So when the mRNA vaccine came out, they said 95%, 94% for Moderna. That was at the strain at the time, and that was 94% reduction. So what does that mean? To do the simple math, you do 1 minus 0.94, so you have 0.06 times the rate of symptoms in a regular unvaccinated person. It seems like a complicated subject, but that means that you have a much smaller risk. So if you look at my hands, if this is your risk, right, for having symptoms and you get vaccinated, you get a 97% reduction, right? So it's almost like about 3%. So that's what it means. It's a relative concept compared to a vaccinated person. I mean, compared to an unvaccinated person, you have a 97% lower percentage. It's a relative risk reduction in having disease. And so if there's less virus in the population, your relative risk actually falls. And so that's what they mean by it. And so people are having breakthrough infections because there's more virus, so there's the greater risk. And even if you reduce it by 97%, you still have something left. And that's what's happening. And so when you talk about the efficacy, they're usually referring to the symptoms. But for hospitalizations and death, the vaccine is 99.9999 whatever percent effective at preventing death. For symptoms, currently for the Delta variant, it is about 85 to 75% effective at reducing your symptoms compared to an unvaccinated person. A little bit complicated, but that's what it means. So you can just think about your risk. This is your risk, and this is what's happening. And so if there's less virus, you have a smaller risk. Even if there's a lot of virus, you still have a very low chance of getting hospitalized and dying because it's almost 100% effective. It's 0. You can't see this gap between my fingers. Hope that helps.
Okay, Dr. Pepraya, better was Sibibre and Umre and Yamina Mosodia Babusia for sending Dr. Kayano. This is a very exhaustive discussion. We can actually finish it today. And until your best Munina said, Dr. Fona more in life, send a Panyajina Kayano, chatting questions near Bano, more with the answering of it. Dr. Pepranso indicates or sharing a contact so we can reach out to him and then use him for your church programs. Your health department and Mama was a quine so. Yadi Jumedia, Dihono air by you take a song from Boston Choir. You are Sorpenny Benjamin Ajimai from Riverside. Ebedi nim for your prayer session. No, and inti see how never could tear and you know na you are not Sorpenny Ajimai Atwaswamai. Onyankopɔn safo mamu nyina adwo ebre ye yedru mu no nso so no kyerɛ sɛ nyina ye ebre ya komase na ansa na no ye bɛkɔ ye mpae no so ye bɛda ye ho atwede mpɔn ase ye odi ye dru ene edi kan nyina etimi ba so mprensa no nyina no enya ensem akɛse na nwumere de de ɛkyɛn so da ɛno nti mehyira Dr. Pepra de so na fe ye de mpae bobre no ahyase Yehowa ye de wase nwumere ade chekeke na ode akyɛ yin mofra ye mofra ye de won ye bɛwo won ha on papa no won maame akoa me kai pa kan besha no ye mrantie nkwara nketoa sesia ye nananom ne ye ma na kyerɛkyerɛ yin eye japade awode ama yen a ye hia ahai wadom ye no ya de nyina wode ya afam ye ne nso so wode ya beduru kyerɛ sɛ wo wrade na sɛ wodi yenim de na yenim na yetiae na momma mfasma mre ye ne kyerɛ sɛ wura wo hyira so ye de ade edi asɛmbre ye no mpo no wode ya nantimo abeduru sa pe ye de wase ho ade no waye bio no afie wo yenim no yenim sɛ wode ya bɛkɔ ansti yesraw ene ye nante nimre ye bre kuma ase na fe ye ba ye de ensoma to anim ya kra na kwakodeda eno nti yesraw bra ye fifi bra ye fro we wadamenti amen ye mpaye a edikan no ante Paulina a wo mishiana asafum ana obebo amaye enuanom munim sɛ de medi kan kan ye no me ankasa de me pagya me nsamam ebi sɛ bɛyɛ mfie kakra ni na ye ne mo East Coast fo ye mo ye ntem tete ye ene awrade ama ye nkwan sɛ ye no mo ye tibedi California ha so so no awrade aka ya san de ya bɛka ho bio eno nti no edamo ase ne de awrade ase na ni nyina kamfu ano afidie sumpo no sesi amhwe nipa ahensia aduanan ena wo so ye ho a wahwe ye de aduro no hia seda ye ho a wakasa ye ho aduro no hia seda ye yade mu ye suku kromu kan besha ekoye ne nkoda nyina na dada ba kom ye tumri kiti aduane ye bedie mpo ye sori anopa ne aba New York aba beto ansa na ye nya bibia ma mofra ye di de awrade ahwe a kyira ye de aduro no se ana na se ana ye dipa bonefo pa ne ye tiafo ante Paulina je ya na mu na de awrade ase wona de kese a waya ma yen a ye wo kure mu ne titru Ghana memendafo a ye wo kure mu na ni agye anwumre yie na mu se ye ho a aka ye hu no pani emos no mo ye no mo hyase no ano awie me ho se emos nso ani agye da ye ho asema ye ante Paulina menkasa bio mo me mo mpae
Ifa mo chao mo me mo mpae agidifo yensru dimafo na ne nyame ejaba tampa nyame a woyem ye ejase be hyiam se ya na yesi ye da wase ade na ye nka se de waya ama ye no doso radi ye de wase se woye nyame a woye nyame stronko ye tumi nya wo de ye ho atwere wo ebise nyame mu nyina wo na woye nyame kese se wo na wo bo ade awrade ye de wase ye hye adwumadie yase hwadwini a wodi ama ye mpanyimfo na awrade nhyehyɛ wo mo aye ade ama ye awrade ye de wase wo nkwa ye nkwa a wodi afam ye kanye se wo nyame wadum mu a ko tamfo no so ye mu no ko pese ye nyina ya yira na nso so ehunu se wo so wo nyansa onim se wo nyame wo nyansa zum ya beboa ye ni o awrade aboa ye ni o asore dem kura na nke efre ye nyina se bira nke enya nipa hensi na hwe se de zum yi otamfo no se na wira ho ye da wase papa de waya ama ye no ye hwehwehwehwe ye ntumi nka efise se nya wunyame na wo ya fa nke ye be ye den waka kire se ye nsro If so kaya ho free say the kosi we are say ye nti awurade de ho ato so na wo so obi a wode ne ho to so no o awurade unya no da ye de wase wo bo hyepa ye de wase awurade de wo ye ma ye nyina ye ma eni ye nananom eni abusuan awurade hwe de ekoso se nyanya me no wa ya Israel kan ye de wase awurade wo enhweso pa ye de wase wo niema ehinta ye ne a unyame wonam wadom so na wuyi kire yen sadie ni titiro anwumre basi nipa bebre se emmo nanso nyankopon wame akire mu ama na ye simple ya ade a ya mfa sika nkotua ya anya hwe nyame ye de wase o papa wadumu ye de wase na waka chance wotamfo bia obedi akire wo bohye o wam nyina be wakiri no mo ahwe ase so wotamfo no wodi asutumi eja ye de wase sa wo ba wiase wo be gira ya na mu na wu ma yen nai enam santi yeni ayaba human so no mo yentumi abanyina wo se ye de ho to so a ye benya nkwa awurade da bi nkwa gye enu nti na awurade wadumu yenyina yetumi abehia ahoma so otumfo agya na nyame yede wase kase no wase a enye yie hwemaba wa ne mrantie ti se ba bi ebi ni nam na yede waboaboa yede ya no de aba yede yen awurade wudie wo yede wase de wa ya maye otumfo yede wase enim de yenka ebisa aseda no edoso abroso wa ya amana abroso na ni nyina mu anidaso a wode amaye se yeme yakumantutu COVID die ya mi akoma tutie di yen twaso ani anyuni se trabia pi wo waje fi a wasiesie di ama woma awurade sa ni da so yi a wo di ama yani eya aseda o tumfo agye nyame sanya wanke ye be ye den otumfo ye koda ye ya nsore a nki ye ntumi mi so obi akwahyen ye de wase wo nkwa a wo di ama ye na ni titiro mu ye de wase nkwagye nhyehyɛ ene wiase ayirayi wamma wo mpanyimfo ne asɔfo aka etirabɔ mu na awurade yehia yeso obi ameto anasesem di ankyerɛ ye wadum nti asɛm no ayɛ ka nyina de enim se firi wo nkwanwoma no bible no nti awurade yesrɛw mane to aso saa na asɛm ayɛ tie nyina firi wo nyame wasɛm mu that says the Lord enu nti ne yabehia ha nam saa yeso awurade etumi edi wanam wachi ama kwan no a wasiesie di amaye no ye nsabeka ebisa wo kan se wo kosiesie baabi no ye nia na kosiesie maye ne nim se wo badi ye de wase wo bohye ye de wase wo do ye de wase wo nkunibdi a wadi amaye ewo Yesu Kristo dini mu amen
best na jina awurade anemu na yen west coast for yadam wase ye to ase riverside e se mo de yan abeka ho emergency yaba empa ye di so no ante afi antobam ono na obebo amayen enei no a ye di kan no ya ye bia no ntimi nkwani mu se yanso se awurade mfa ya bɔ ne nkyɛn ano ntimo jade hye no ayen awurade Yesu Kristo hwe gu ye no ya tontom awurade ne ada na se awie no ehia sɛ ɔmayen so ya san yen ehu so wagye ya atum wɔ mogya no munti te nyame agwa ama yaba yen maame sɛ awurade mayen na onhohoro yɛ bɔne no ansa na yakwakoda da wasomome mo mpae
yɛda wase nyametumfoɔ wobanbɔ ne wo hwɛ so pa yɛda wase bebree sɛ waka yɛn ho yɛda wase sɛ yɛn sɛe yi soso wahwɛ yɛn so wabɔ yɛn ho ban wama bɔne biara nka yɛn na yɛabɛdi ahyia anwummerɛ yi awurade anwummerɛ yi wɔ ma yɛaba yɛsrɛ wo sɛ hu yɛn mmɔbɔ yɛsrɛ wo sɛ fa yɛn mfomsoɔ nyinaa kyɛ yɛn bɔne su biara ɛhinta wɔ yɛn mu ɛhinta wɔ yɛadwene mu yɛakoma mu yɛsrɛ wo sɛ awurade yɛmmɔbɔ na fa ne nyinaa kyɛ yɛn anwummerɛ yi yɛaba yɛnsɛ sɛ yɛbɛkɔ yɛakɔ yɛnsɛ sɛ yɛbɛka yɛakeka yɛnsɛ sɛ yɛbɛhwɛ awurade yɛahwɛ yɛsrɛ wo agyina Yesu Kristo din mu srɛ wo sɛ awurade hu yɛn mmɔbɔ na fa yɛn mfomsoɔ nyinaa kyɛ yɛn na hohoro yɛn ho na tew yɛn ho tew yɛn akoma ho You may my bow, yes, row. Yamobo. Nafa yamboni na che energy ya yempai boy a day ba when you may. Uncle Pines, yes, so already. I am bonny che. Yamobo. I am, yes, so it is a day who I did but 2 and Indian so already by Yamay. The answer won't put already what do many whom bread or so my auntie. Who by now we any na my ye can sing. Asidania ye and counting. That was say so the and bonny a chain. That was say someone hey a bonnet and you may ma yaba. Yes, so we am a bo. Yes, so till we am. Yes, so Gary not till we am, na yes, ma. That I was saying you may so with tea. And in fact, by about when many na brassy, but tea and pie boy I did by when you why ye be studying. That I was say so with tea. I am shy. What don't any human do? Amen.
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 Amen. Amen. Amen.
Yanom enche yebeko. So be ya ocha no pe betimi abampa ye yedru so no ye. Adom konkron na hwe gu. Anopa no yete se abofo miensa enkrasem no ehia se ekọ. Awie se revival and reformation. Se betimi akwa a ono ana ohyen bo se yenko na oka ye ho. Na oni yen wo ho mpo kosi wiase awie. Maame Agnes Ajiman na bebo empaye no a eto aso no. Jawo konkron no onom yen emfa yen hye ono ankasa ne mu ebra ya tie ne nsɛm nyinaa coronavirus o delta o adom hom konkron no se yen kɔ yanim ma ye nyina hɔ yen tutu ye nan obɔ mpa ye no wie a maame wedin no a yɛde maame menya testimony baako se de maame apia kwaten sisi ho mpa ye to aso esia pa una dro so uma testimony no wie a na fei akampaye mienu na yede enumere esom no so no asi na mo nya kwan akoda maame Agnes Agnes to aso
Anuanom ahobrɛaseɛ kwan so moma yɛn nyinaa mmra yɛakoma ase na yɛmmɔ mpaeɛ. Yɛgya a wɔ soro, Nyame batampa, agya a woyɛ mu yie, nko a na ɔmfena, as imperfect as we are. Yɛda wo ase sɛ wama kwan sɛ yɛmmra adom ahengua yɛn. Yɛda wo ase akwanya a wode ama yɛn sɛnea ho keka yɛtie wafrɛ yɛn sɛ yɛmfiri esum kabii mu aba wo han kɛseɛ yi mu sɛ yɛmɛyi wo mani yɛn kyerɛ. Yɛda wo ase papa sɛnea yɛti wafrɛ wo ba ahene mu hene Kristo ɔsaagyefo de na ama yɛn ɔtoo ne ho mpan bɛwu asase yi so animguaseɛ wuo bɛsii yɛanan ɛwu maa yɛn. Papa yɛda wo ase yɛmma wo so yɛkamfo yɛhyɛ wo anuonyam yɛtontom wo sɛ wama kwan na plan of redemption wayɛ ama yɛn na yɛn nsɛnso yɛwɔ mu bie. Yɛda wo ase Kristo wuyi a ɔrekɔ no wɔsan hyɛ yɛn bɔ sɛ ɔrekɔ na ɔbɛma ne nam gyinafoɔ no aba. Ɔne Honhom Kronkron ɔno na ɔbɛyɛ yɛn werɛkyekyefoɔ ɛwɔ awieeɛ berɛ mu. Ɔno na ɔbɛkyerɛkyerɛ yɛn akɔtene ne ahodoɔ nyinaa mu ɛne nokorɛ mu. Yɛda wo ase sɛ wɔani ehwammɔ Kristo kɔɔeɛ no Pentecost da no wohwie Honhom Kronkron no guu adiyifoɔ ɛne wɔkyidifoɔ nyinaa so asomafoɔ ama ɛnɛ ebi aso yɛn so yɛso. Yɛda wo ase sɛ saa Honhom Kronkron yi nka yɛn ho a yɛntumi nsom no honhom ne nokorɛ mu. Yɛsom ntumi nsɔ w'ani. Kyerɛwsɛm mu wɔn a wɔyɛ nneɛma akɛseakɛse nyinaa yɛ wɔn a na Honhom Kronkron wɔ wɔn so. Yes, and the Lord was with him. And the Lord was with him. Ɛnam sɛ wɔka wɔn ho nti no honhom no de wɔn yɛ adwuma. Ɛno nti yɛda wo ase. Yɛda wo ase. Yɛana wo ase a na yɛtiafoɔ. Saa berɛ yi na yɛn mpaeɛ a yɛrebɔ yɛde srɛdi nyinaa ne sɛ papa Awieye bremu ya ohaw adolso yi. Yeso se beka ye hu. Atete ahodo adolso yi. E de hu hye yen so. Ma ehu nyina mfi ye mu na honhom kronkron wura kyekyefoɔ yi ɔnhyɛ yɛ den sɛ baabi a yɛwɔ biara no yɛnsuro yakoma emmohu efi sɛ woka yɛn ho na wotumi adeɛ nyinaa yɛ ɛno nti saa yare dɔm yi ate asote yi yɛda wase sɛ watumi abɔ yɛn ho ban wa preserve yɛ lives ama yɛda so te nkwam ebinom awuwu sonko kwan so ne ɛsɛ na mmɔfra a wɔn ahwɛ wɔn awofoɔ nyinaa wakɔ so ayɛ wɔn yɛkyekyefoɔ agya wo deɛ woyɛ agyanka enyanka papa yɛde nsa nkɔla nyinaa ɛhyɛ wɔn nsa yɛde wɔn nso a wɔn ahwɛ wɔn abusuafoɔ wɔn loved ones nyinaa nso ahyɛ wɔn nsa sɛ ma wɔn nkonko yɛkyekyefoɔ yi ɔnka wɔn mu nyinaa ho yareɛ yi de ɔhaw crisis aba yɛ abrabɔ mu ebi yɛ health issues ebi yɛ financial issues ebi yɛ family any personal issues yɛde yɛn nyinaa yɛ ho hyɛ nsa na yɛwɔ biara na yɛsɔ sɛ masa ɔhaw yi nkonko no nhyɛ yɛn den na ama awerɛhoɔ anhyɛ yɛn so nkonko no nka yɛn ho na ama yɛgyidie anwo nkonko no nka yɛn ho na ama yɛamfollow prey to temptations yankasɛ asrefo ankasa na munyame na mosom no wɔ he na mmom aboa yɛn adrive yɛn nyinaa to yɛn knees ama yɛsu afrɛ nyanko yesu kristo ama wayɛ refuge na ba ne saa adeɛ a yɛmmɔhu fi sɛ wahyɛ yɛn bɔ wɔ n'asɛm mu sɛ adeɛ nyinaa di boa wɔn a ɔdɔ wɔ wɔn a wabɔ tirim pɔ afrɛ wɔ mu na yɛntumi nkle mu saa promise yi na afei ne yɛnam mu biara no yɛntumi nyina mma wo nkonko ne ba yɛn so a yɛbɛhu sɛ watumi waka me bebrebe a ɛwɔ wasafo mu yi ɛnyɛ other people and that person na mmom ɛyɛ wɔtweaseɛ no a daa nyinaa he stands behind our pain and our hurt agya yɛsɔ yɛde ɔtweaseɛ no hyɛ wo nsa ma wo nkonko yi ntwi n'anim ɔnhyɛ yɛn nso yɛ den sɛsɛ yɛde yɛn ho too so nokura mu a wobɛka yɛn ho no nti no yɛnsuro ɔbonsam pi sɛ he is already a defeated foe ɛno nti bra yɛn yɛmfa yɛn ho ntoo so na nkonko no ɛnhyɛ yɛ den baabiara a yɛwɔ biara no yɛntumi nyina ma wo yɛmmɔhu yɛnsuro awiei berɛ mu a nneɛma nyinaa te asete yi yɛnsuro yɛbɛkɔ so atwerɛw yɛbɛkɔ so anya wo mu gyidie yɛbɛkɔ so ahu sɛ wo ne yɛnyame wo na ne asɛm mpo woyɛ ne yie nti yɛsrɛ nnwummerɛ yɛka ne sɛ ma ho nkonkron bi mmra yɛn so yɛntumi nyina ma yɛntumi ntena asetena ɛbɛhyɛ wɔ anuonyam yɛtumi nso ahyɛ wo wɔ anuonyam na yɛde asɛm no nso akɔ na yɛnnuanom a wɔn ntee w'asɛm no hu yɛn mmɔbɔ na ka yɛn ho awie berɛ mu ɛnyɛ wo ho nkonkron no mfiri yɛn mu na nkonkron no ne yɛn tena na awie pɛyɛ ɛwɔ w'anim na woba a nyɛ yɛn nko yɛne wɔn a wotie w'asɛm de yɛ asɛm no yɔfo amen aho wadom nti amen
Amen.
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 Testimony.
Midahute kwamwa eya wadom arako Yeswe unawaya dinye wayi myefi musumu wayi myefi esaimu wama menim enwase onyame wa yemye ne wadoye dosu emreninti medanyumi besi hasi Midende Magi Kwaten me Pacific Rooster dodo no afra bi mambi na me jaha me danya kokon ase papa apa me man so me tontom no me ya ne kase na me hye ne den kronkron na nimonyam oyedi a oni me adi oban bostronko a odi abọ me wa yare sa odi ama me ni panyina ni nya ni seye Ebinu de nru media no kra nanso so wonya wonkwa nanso media awrade ya madom a enya me papa bi nti enya ma hoɔden ne metumi
And so now domini na who more browning a beer so me so. And then them and you may come home. And you timo more minion than yamiasi if you so ye and a doye or da.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
2015. And now my doctor catch him say, well, who be our me lungs mo. Na ye monitor no ye share adipro. Enti Augustua me or follow up with me. Na ekodru 2017. Na afede me akra na mabohum ti me san akɔhwɛ sɛ ayɛ den. No say o. I grow kakra binti no. Yan hwɛ nim biem. Enti no me so na me ti mo ntɛm me call Boston. Ema omo ekɔyɛ me biopsy. Omo si bibia enim okay. Ewo mo afede 2019. Me koye scan bi ma o si ade no enyin grow. Enti SCA. Afede na me me all kinds of tests. Still omo hu ade crop, but it's just growing to necessary. Ehwe ho asem eka. Afe omo say I asthma nti no mama me inhalers ne ahodo bebre me a minti pain bia but na me ni nyina akọ me lose my voice. Nti no me take puffs ne na say I really my relieved kakra. Ewo mo ayewra 2020. Me san koye stand bi me chese ade no grow by grow. Into your say on the onim say onim at the crop, but the fact say grow no as I say oyi. Enti afi misro corona so aba. Adene so me lungs mo. Enti na misro say makwa surgery no. Enti yakeka ya be through October last year. As I said, me ko. Ade chinye da mo de share me so ye. Ya bompaye. A friend pastor mo bompaye ma me na ye koy. Na me koy no. Me do ho 5:30 anopa. Oma ye mi bibia omo di me ko operating room no na ye 7:30. Me hu hwe biem to the following morning. And I mean me kro ne memba. Na eye kakra doctor no so baye. Eche so omo akoye ye akono so ka kire me say okwa me what table no so no obeti tissue ni bi pathologist ho akọ check it. Say ye cancerous obey the whole upper loop of my lungs no right side. Senye bia so dia ne baby aye ade no wono kwa no be. Enti no me de omo de me akominim hwe enti ade achi a me obaye no. Now one mama me chest tube. Ade achi obaye no na che so omo frɛ me kru ka che no de asi nyina. Enti obaye obeka na che se cancer stage 3. Na me ka adanyame ase say stage 3. Ebinumu die no sa na nso so. Me de anyame adi me ho afofie. Ama me another chance. Nti oka chem say okay, me chemotherapy and heavy dose of radiation. And I see you. It's me ye me ba fie na no so aya adwendwen. If you say chemo no, and also na me stretch asa no aden. Enti no. The friend doctor say ye ni mo nyina. And e bisa wo. Yo mo nyina be kan say menkoye. Menkoje. Enti emre ni so ye January na me start here na ese me omoma me 4 doses. Na me start in January no every 3 weeks bia na makoye baako. Na me ka say surgery ni kura me koye no eno enya yakra se kimono. Me koba dia into me kura. E bofa me trimu me bebia masum me bibia me bebia the aduane kura kan wanu enye yi ye be ko yam no so enche kura na mafe ni nyina enti na no de na ede ma me pa yami ya madum ma mitimi je 3 doses afi de free work on na minya chest pain and I make a report to my doctor no see there be chest pain ni there to me 4th one and mammy into me emergency into the office one of ambulance one by family koi and also hear all kinds of tests echogram stress test be yeah next one by catch them some akuma there it's okay ibia in na me gallbladder and na I say ahono and I feel block into omu ko clean it up into omu koye no omu call for cleaning and nature say idea na I say it's in na we across on big clean tin omu work omu nyane me bim me buy no omu san betwa me ho hia be ka chere say sani ade na ye no ese so omu yi ni nyina. That was March. Inti maybe some say na me chances yes time. And I'm so I know there. And crofo bebre yibia omo ye okay. Inti no. Me your friend saying me mom kwan no mu na sani aye no mu clean kra na enye yi. Na am say me okay dia ene omo go ahead. Inti ade chi en omo san be fa me koy. Enom koyi gallbladder ni nyina. Ti nyam yadum oh kakra na doctor no me cancer doctor no catch him say on to me mommy infusion need be into obey the pills. Na pills need they are no nya den. They say infusion into no. Me fan every day be back for 3 years. And I'm see you, Mate. Enti or the pills no mommy na me didi mo ame no kakra. And then yami adum. That's need there na me to me to hokra na my bread. Minye bibia so na my bread. Enti kakra na me sorry me nante kakra to de mhia. Afi na me de si abonten kakra. Yami adum. Ahwa me so na me timi nante. Neighborhood ha nyina.
Amen.
Amen. Minti
Amen. Amen.
Nti anwumre ni wo ha say ya.
Amen.
Eda onyankopon ase pa mon ka me ho ne na Awurade ase ka
Oh,
dia wa
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Nanka nyame din.
Amen. Amen. Nyankopɔn yɛ nyame. Oh.
Amen.
Adeɛ da wo ase.
Amen.
God be with you. Yɛ kɛse. Oh. Adeɛ da wo ase.
Praise God. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
It has software what was that papa.
Amen.
Pastor Jamra bebu nkotodwe e wo me ho afidwe mu bompa ye mame.
Amen.
Pastor Moa ne yiri bebu nkotodwe bompa ye mame.
Amen. Amen.
Pastor Moa yiri ne me on my appointment bi a mekobia ma mi ne me neko.
Amen. Amen.
Pastor mani de biara da frɛ me bisa me sɛ me ho te sɛ.
Amen.
Asɔre panifo nyinaa ba me fie ha bompa ye mame.
Amen.
Rooster your line no so de biara da miti wo mo pompa ye ma me anopa awia anajo.
Amen.
Adofo a wo pa fie ha behwe me enu ye de pre mu me now myself. Anya sa kwanye de me fa so adamu nyina.
Oh yes. Amen.
Amen. Busuafo a wo Michigan various things.
Amen.
Dr. Pastor Bexing, one New York, one to car Bahabashemi. Mr. Jemai, woman in Bahabashemi.
Amen.
Mijinaha, Minima Busia, that was the papa.
Amen.
Maya, name one pie, boy, and the money. And it's me the Munina.
Amen. Mata testimony ba kuna ba na onim se no so esumbo the radiasti nambi the radiasti the wardrobe enso yekosi adam pa ebo bia ne ho ayeja omu bo brema the radiasti the wardrobe mata jina ye nyina ya na mu na asede ba yi no wabo na fe wi a na ehia so mata ajimai ta boache ajimai Riverside asori
Pacha ya bompaye. Se ya maya nisu hwe mi pono swa. Ehe fan ya muwe free ba. Ya muwe free asafu rade. O show ni asasi ya fo. Eninti na niwe. NAGSDA buswa. Ya fasa abre se ye bie ya nuni aka. Niwe rade wa ya amaye. Na asha afufuru na enkrane. Eninwe ya dawasi unyame da wase wadoye ni nshira udi adom yeye da wase Bible na hwe so pa da wase eni a udi hwe ye nso oba bibia ayewo da wase aso a udi tie ye ni moyefue Yesu da wase ensa kasi a upeja de gie nyina fi owuo mu ena anwumre nti na anti mage antumi ana no abegina fidikase so abira no apɛ mu aka ne unyame wa ya amano na abusua nyina ne no bomada wawurade wase yi wa ye kanfu di wo kwan sonko afa so agi wa pa wa free owuo mu ya we cancer ne depend na do sa stage ya okotumi san ba wadu musunti make provisions amanye ba nyina akọ aboa ne sei na se no da so ti asia ase dani ayeye nkanfo ne ntonto ne radede ma wo anyi na ye ka nyina ne se radede be free so mo so be de waseda so mo be de wayeye so be de nkanfo
amen
na utumi ye ni se ye
yes
da wase sa waje wabawa radede na ye ka ho ne se wa biira no aka ne wa ya ma no nti so sefo no be fa so ayenhye boni bi afa ne ho a oduma ba kwaso nti wasiano na ye kofa chama ne se koso ma obasa ne kese wo ne so
amen amen
na wa adom no ahumbo broso nti ye do na busua nyina e hye wo nsa
amen
fa edi hu be hye nipa nyina mutitu immediate family yes so isa hu ni fi honum na bo nyina ban sonko na ma obibia enya saa we ni se ahwe ameso etimanya saa ha oni bi yenim se oji ba kwa no agye nyina nti na wa isa wu ya wi mu yeni a wo saa ha onu bi mpa enyi ni ho adi no oduma ba kwa wonam ne gye a wagye ne so bagye ye nyina koso na koso hiraye ma danse enhye na nimu mma ebe bi a ebe hia mu bi mu no mane sanfana dance mrefi se nim se nyama bebree aka wo sew nyina na madum ne humobro so be ya ama no ye da wa semwe yi waye ye kan food din se watie ye na waye ye bisa de amaye adum ne humobro ni nti amen
Amen.
Yehowa onto n'anim nkyerɛ. Yehowa ɔma yɛn asomdwie. Ɔma yɛn nkɔmɔ a atum. Noa no ankasa no nto n'anim nkyerɛ yɛn anadwo basuo mu. Ɔmanabɔfo kronkron no nwowa yɛn. Ɛmmɔ wɔn ho ban mfiri yaredɔm wuo ne ɛsɛn biara ho. Nko so sɛ yɛn ankasa no ne yɛn nuanom bɛhyia bio no yɛnwura. Yɛntena wɔdwa ase. Yɛntena wɔdom mu. Enkyere biara wofi w'anim no ɔne onyam mu wɔbɛfa yɛn. Yɛnyɛ de ɛno nti no Kristo. Yɛkoro ɛsrɛ hwɛ yɛn so. Ɔkyerɛ no di yɛn akyi. Na kyerɛ yɛn no soro kwan. Yɛfiri hanom a yɛba na yɛbɛtena wɔ hene daa. Yehowa nhyira yɛn. Ɔntena anim ma yɛn. Ɔno ankasa no ɛma yɛn napa. Enkosi sɛ ɔkyerɛ no pɛ bɛsena bɛhyia bio. Ɔno a yɛagye nkɔpɛ Yesu Kristo ne din mu. Hyira yɛn abɔ mpaeɛ. Nhyira yɛn nneɛma nnwummerɛ ni daa. Amen.
Abusuafoɔ megye di yɛ sɛ onyame mma hyiam sei na yɛte adansedie a ɛte ɛyɛ nkuranhyɛ bebree ɛma yɛn na mema de kasa na ɔka chemo ne experience ne how a ne body feeling ne adeɛ no na was bringing memories and I mean believe who said there are several survivors on this platform who had that same feeling. But me gidi ye say shey nyina yen Christ there. Nyankopon aye som no. He's still in the miracle business.
Yes.
Amen.
Na wa yare sa no ebeye kom. Abusuafo aha na anwumre ye de dwumadie no nyina ebe na we but me sure say munya break akra na muntie me. Anwumre ye da aboafo edi dwumadie nyina ase. Da gyeman wone wo mo abebo mpae nyina nyame ehira mo ene Riverside team nyina nyame ehira mo nyina anwumre ye maame Christian Amankwa ebo mpae emayen from Charlotte, Elder Joseph Donko from Cincinnati, and so kan ye trusem no maye Dr. David Pepra kwaten ena di anim COVID and some who say yes akwa so dem mu anim we see put in place and common bebre wo ho my understand doctor ne doctor for we yentam ni nyina na wo mo emwaye se ne be ya as we transition no you benya be much more easy na muma ye nyina ya hwehwɛ mu na your prejudice bia e be wo na enema bia yenti ase bia no yempe questions na yempe the various answers. Health departments for no mumwa in various churches no mumwa yen was ade no so na emwa ma onyame asafo entumi emfa ne ntoma pa infra as we go through this transition. Kwa afwa e be boa yen ene Ebenezer from Garland ene Boston kwa enyame din da munyina mo ase nyame ya adomo a ekina dwumadie no ehye ase anopa no nsia 6 a.m. Eastern time mo am Pacific no 3 a.m. mo am finfin no obi ahwe no bebia ni de ne agina mo ya mo de anse betima ba wait ma makra nya bre number be dwumadie no online it is available but before streaming on various platforms se ne be ya betima bo ma dwumadie no atumi akọ animu se ne ase adansidie hyew so wo adansidie bia bomodin say wo be ma wasafo panya ya aware of it and I say osofo kusi eboa and I say elder boa ben say ne be ya omo betimi aboa na coordinate amadwumadi no atumi akeka asi animu eyiye say me be bo empire ehra dwumadi so na afe ye de na dwumadi no aba ewiye ekina ame ya adoma Dr. Paul Yeboa ene bidi anim ekina no pa and until mama nyina ye hye no enso esa nti yɛde anwummerɛ dwumadie no ba na wie no mɛhyerɛ sɛ mama yɛn nyinaa yɛnsi yɛn ntiri ase na yɛnhyira so yɛwie a na mediafoɔ no de nnwom apɔn yɛn. Ɔsoro Hene Kristo yɛda wase. COVID bere yi mu ɛberɛ a yɛnhu deɛ yɛmfamfa wakora yɛ abɛsi saa mmerɛ yi. Yɛwɔ gyidi yie sɛ wowɔ nhyehyɛeɛ ma wasafo. Even as we go through this process and go through this transition, no, kansafo biara ho, kansafo ba biara ho, titiriw no yɛn a yɛwɔ so much of concerns. But anwummerɛ ni yɛsrɛ wɔn sɛ mo asomdwe no ne yɛn tena. Yɛfiri afidie so yɛmfiri wɔ anim. Yɛkɔ yɛn nkɛtɛ so yɛhyerɛ wo sɛ hyehyira yɛn na ma yɛn wɔ home pa na wopagya yɛn adekyea a yɛada wase ayiwayɛ. Wo din ɛna asedanka anwummerɛ yi wɔ Yesu Kristo din mu nti. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Lord, hallelujah.
Amen.
Amen.